Irene Courtney signed up for nurses training in Windsor, Ontario when she was 18 years old in 1938. A year later, she was working in London when the war began, and soon after came the Battle of Britain and the Blitz, the relentless German bombing of British cities. In November 1943, she was on board a troop ship headed for Italy when it was attacked by German aircraft and sunk in the Mediterranean. She survived the attack and continued to Italy, where she volunteered for a frontline surgical unit during the Battle of Ortona. She survived the war, returned to Canada, and devoted the rest of her life to nursing. She died in Windsor at the age of 89. The following is her post-war recollection of the early days of the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. At first, there were few changes on our routine following the declaration of war in September 1939. Then, one lovely, sunny Sunday afternoon, air raid casualties began arriving. Among them was one of our X-ray nurses and her mother. Their house had sustained a direct hit, and all that was left standing was the staircase. As I was on duty in the emergency ward, it was my responsibility to help attend to the casualties and admit those who were to be hospitalized. Fortunately, only one stick of bombs had been dropped. They fell on a residential area, so the casualties were small in number. All were dazed, and many cut by flying glass, for it wasn't until later that the need to tape the windows was established. Over 200 glass particles were removed from one casualty. The particles were small, and though painful, were not life-threatening. From this early beginning, through trial and error, and the experiences of World War I veterans, our routines emerged. Some were successful and continued. Others proved impractical and were discontinued. Among the latter was the policy that all nursing students were to report to the hospital in full uniform 5 minutes after an air raid siren sounded. The impracticality of this policy became evident with the heavy bombing of London, for the planes flew over our area. Air raid alerts started around 9 p.m. and lasted until 6 a.m. So many experiences, not a normal part of the nursing curriculum, such as the day our hospital was evacuated to admit patients from a London hospital that had to be evacuated because of the bombings. The night I was temporarily alone in a ward of 44 surgical patients and a huge supply of extra mattresses that were to be used to shield the bed patients during an air raid. We had a severe air raid that night. Bombs dropping, dogfights overhead as the RAF intercepted the enemy planes, and shrapnel from the ground, artillery weighing in at a hefty 100 pounds. I lifted the mattresses and protected the patients, only to have the all-clear sound as I reached the last one and my partner returned to duty. My last day at the hospital was unforgettable. I had finished my training, taken my final written, oral, and practical exams, and I was having a last lunch with my colleagues. We had just started eating when a fierce air raid started. Grabbing an OR gown to cover my travel dress and wearing high-heeled sandals, I worked from 12 noon to just after 7 p.m. I will never forget my last patient, a young Air Force airman. He was one of the last dug out of a bombed-out hotel that had been taken over by the RAF. Fortunately, the majority of men were on maneuvers, or the loss would have been great. This casualty, quiet and uncomplaining, lay still as I tended to his injuries and irrigated his eyes that were full of dust and dirt so that he could see again.